There are two paragraphs in this gospel, and as I was looking at this gospel and preparing for the homily, it struck me how different they are, the two paragraphs of this gospel. The first paragraph seems to be rather heady, or maybe we might say it seems to be academic. There was a scholar, a scholar of the law. The first 5 books of the Bible are called the law, or the Torah, or the Pentateuch. And he stood up to test Jesus, academic. And he says, teacher, he calls him teacher, what must I do to inherit eternal life? And Jesus said to him, what is written in the law? What is written in those first 5 books of the Bible? How do you read it? Jesus said. And then the scholar says, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, and all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself. And he's quoting 2 passages from the Old Testament there. Jesus says in reply, you have answered correctly. Do this and you will live. So this first paragraph says academic. It's kind of heady. It's, in a sense, it's theoretical. It's abstract in a certain way. It's what are the rules and how do we find them? It's abstract in the sense it's up in the air. It's not really concrete. But the second paragraph is real, and it's concrete, and it's immediate. It's practical. It's down to earth. There's a situation. Who is my neighbor? And then Jesus concretely says a man fell victim to robbers. They stripped him and they beat him and they went off leaving him half dead. And then a Levite comes that way, and then a priest comes that way, and they pass by. And then a Samaritan comes and he's moved with compassion. This is concrete. This is real. The man is half dead. He is stripped of what he had. So the Good Samaritan approaches him and pours oil and wine over his wounds and bandages them and lifts them up on his own animal, places him on his own animal, takes him to an inn and cares for him, and pays that he is cared for, and is going to care for him if there's more expense along the way. So these are the 2 paragraphs, the kind of the abstract, the intellectual, the theoretical, the academic, the heady, and then the real, the practical, the concrete, the immediate. I say this because I want to bring up 3 occupational hazards. Occupational hazards. You know, there was an occupational hazard for this lawyer, this teacher of the law. And the occupational hazard is he might have known the law really well. He might have had it memorized. He might have known where every piece of the law, where different parts of it were, and he could point to it. If you will, he knew his scroll well, as they would have scrolls in Jesus' time for the Old Testament. Problem is he might have stayed in his head, and he missed the real and the concrete and the practical, the down-to-earth reality of how do I carry out these 2 great laws of loving God with all that I have and loving my neighbor as myself. So that's the first occupational hazard I see here. The second occupational hazard for us as church-going people is, and I got to be very careful about this because this is good, but do we just stay in our prayers? Do we just stay in the church? Those are really good things and essential things. But do we just stay there? Or do we go to the second paragraph where we find somebody who's in a very difficult situation and we're called to help them and reach out to them and even maybe be inconvenienced by them? There's a third occupational hazard that I'd like to mention, and we are all part of this as well. It's the occupational hazard of modernity. Modernity. You know, in modernity, the occupational hazard is just staying on social media. The president should do this. What should be done over there in that country should be this. The problem with our government is that. The occupational hazard of modernity is we become spectators. We become critics. We become talk show hosts. We see the world's problems, they're right there in front of us on our screen and in our palm, and we are the ones who, try to figure out what's wrong and what's right, and so we're very far removed from the problems. And so we want to get into the second paragraph, where we are concrete and we're reaching out to people who are in need. Here's some quotes that I pulled up from Mother Teresa. That she was very practical, obviously very practical. She saw somebody in need and she went out and she cared for that person. And the three quotes from her. She says, "I want you to be concerned about your next door neighbor." Do you know your next door neighbor? Very concrete, because people say, I got to go over to India where Mother Teresa is in Calcutta, and I got to help her. I got to be the good Samaritan over there. I got to get into the real and the concrete and the practical over there. And she would often say, first love your husband, first love your wife, first love your children, first, as she does in this quote, love your next door neighbor. Do you know your next door neighbor? Do you know what their needs are? How could you help your next door neighbor? That's how you can be a good Samaritan. That's how your faith can be real and concrete and practical. Her second quote, do not wait for leaders. She's not against leaders. Do not wait for leaders. Do it alone, person to person. Reach out to somebody yourself. If only we had this administration, or if we only had these laws, or whatever. Do it yourself. One to one, person to person. She is so practical. And one final quote on her practicality. If you can't feed 100 people, feed just one. She gives us concrete examples of how we can do things in very small quantities, if you will, in small areas, if you will. This is very good. And now what I want to do, I think one of the thrust of my homilies is that we see everything, but let's do something as well. We're so connected to the world, but let's be connected to the people who are around us. Let's be connected to our neighbors, to our communities, to our family, and let's love them. I'm going to give you 3 practical examples, lest this be all in our heads. Oh, goodness, that was the first paragraph. It was heady, it was academic. Let's be practical, let's give possibilities and how we can carry out what Mother Teresa says. Don't wait for the leaders to do it alone. Do it person to person. Here are 3 examples. Number 1, at St. Peter's here, we have this great opportunity that you see come up 5 times a year, and it's the St. Andrew Shelter. I know we just had a time to go and do that, and we had it up on our monitors out there in the gathering space. This is a little bit about St. Andrew's Family Shelter. Volunteer with other parishioners from St. Peter's. The St. Andrew Family Shelter is available to families with minor children in Washington County and with families with children who attend school in the Forest Lake School District. St. Andrew's Family Shelter depends on the support of 13 churches, other churches than St. Peter, and is looking for other churches in addition to the 14 including St. Peter's. The member of churches provide hundreds of volunteer. The member churches provide hundreds of volunteer staff for the shelter. As I said, 5 times a year we help with that shelter here at St. Peter's. This is what the volunteers do there. They provide an evening meal. They do light meal preparation and serve the meal. They fill in an overnight shift. That's one possibility. It doesn't mean you have to do that. They have a private room with a full bathroom for the overnight volunteer. They provide some of the needed staples like milk and eggs and bread and lunch items and breakfast items. All the families who participate in St. Andrew's Family Shelter are grateful for the meals that are provided, and as they work toward their goal of getting their own place to call home. So there's one example of how we can be very concrete, how we can do what Mother Teresa asks us to do. I want you to be concerned about your next door neighbor. The family shelter is just down in Hugo here. And can we do something to help our neighbor? Do we know who they are? The second thing is, we have a limited number of people here at our parish who, I shouldn't say limited in the sense that we have some very generous people who do homebound ministry. I heard it said once that Mother Teresa's group, the Missionaries of Charity, on Sundays, they go to nursing homes because those who are in those are some of the most lonely places that there are on Sundays and through the week as well. But on Sundays, they don't have activities as they might have during the week. And so Mother Teresa's sisters go to nursing homes to be with them. And I'm so grateful, we're so grateful for our homebound ministers. They go weekly to the Amira, they go to Birchwood, they go to the Meadows up in Wyoming, and they bring them communion, and they bring them their presents, and they pray the rosary, and they are reaching out to love our neighbor. That's the second example of what we might do. The third is open to all of us. These are open to pretty much most of us as well, but this is something we can do just when we're driving, especially downtown. What do? It's a street corner and somebody's asking for money. Somebody has a sign there. You know, it's really, they should do a psychological test on this to see how different people respond to this, because it seems like a perfect situation. I don't even see him. Or I'm going to see him, or I'm going to say, get a job, or, what am I going to do? And, there's so many emotions that go through us when we see this situation. If you feel safe, I have a suggestion. A couple things. Could we at least look at them and smile? That would be number one. Then they might come up to me. I suppose they might. If you don't feel safe, don't do it. But I suppose you could have your window up and the door locked, and then, could we smile? That would be number one. Number two would be, could you maybe say hello if you feel comfortable? Roll down the window and say hello. That's something you could do. I know another thing people do is they might have gift cards in their car, like $5 gift card to McDonald's. And this is really, you got to be really careful, because sometimes you have two turn lanes, and if you're in this turn lane and the person's over here, you got to be careful. You don't really want them walking across traffic to get your card, because then they might get hit. But if you're over here next to the grass where they're standing, you could give them a gift card, $5 to McDonald's. I don't think they can buy any booze at McDonald's. So, I don't want them to go out and buy booze. Yes, right. So, okay, they could get something at the one thing about that, it's really so profound, is it's a human contact. It's a human contact. And you could even say, pray for me. I'll pray for you. That goes even deeper, It goes even, it's like Jesus, he changes water, Jesus takes wine. They want wine at the wedding feast, and he gives them wonderful wine, the best wine. It's like somebody needs something, I'll give you a McDonald's gift card, and you might be able to get a little something, but I'm going to give you something, even a better wine than that. What's your name? Ask them their name. If you feel comfortable, ask them their name. And if you feel comfortable, you give them your first name. It's a human contact. They're a human person. We want to engage them in a human way. And then we can say, Samantha, I'll pray for you. Would you pray for me? And in that, you're giving them something to do. They're not just taking, but they have to give if they want to. If they're a person of faith, they can say, no, I don't want to pray for you. Or they could be quiet. Or they might say, sure, I'll pray for you. And there, you've given them a purpose for living. I'm going to pray for whoever that generous person was, and because they were generous with me and they're going to pray for me. A little relationship was established there. It's not any kind of an ongoing relation, but a little relationship was established there. How beautiful that is. I want you to be concerned about your next door neighbor, Mother Teresa says. Do you know your next door neighbor? Wouldn't that be nice to get to know somebody's name on the street corner and to tell them our name if we feel comfortable? We got to be careful that we don't live up here in the abstract like the scholar of the law did. He was probably very smart. He knew the Old Testament very well, the Pentateuch, but he needed to get down here into the real and the concrete. And who is my neighbor? And who is my neighbor? Your neighbor could be at the St. Andrew Family Shelter. Your neighbor could be somebody in the nursing facility. Your neighbor could be somebody on the street corner. And you can simply do it person to person. As Mother Teresa said, don't wait for the leaders. You can do it on the street corner. Do it alone, person to person. Oh, your name is Fred? My name is Father Gregory. I'm actually a Catholic priest. Can I give you this gift card? I'm going to say a little prayer for you. Would you say a prayer for me? God bless.